Let's go my Hebrews, it's time to shine. For entertainment purposes only.
Why would you kill off the natives to bring slaves from across an ocean when you could have turned the natives into slaves? Especially when most slaves in human history were prisoners of war. Why would a people steal people they don't like from Africa, free them, just to oppress them forever just because they're brown skinned? Why didn't the US government deport Black Americans after they freed the slaves? Mexicans can be deported, but not the non-native Black Americans you hate. If Native Americans were actually native, why didn't they fight for their rights on their own land during the civil rights movements with Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, and Martin Luther King? Why didn't Native American leaders step up to be assassinated fighting for their rights on land that was stolen from them by the government? Why, for the past 500 years, the biggest enemy of the US has been its own Black American civilians and no one else? Why did the CIA cause the crack epidemic in the Black community and no other communities? Why was the police created to catch only Black slave runaways when there were other races enslaved along with Black people? How does a small minority of a few thousand poor farmers from Europe have both the manpower and resources to enslave tens of millions of Africans, bring them to the Americas while simultaneously committing genocide against Indians, Mayans, Aztecs, Incas, Caribbeans, and the entire South America, colonizing Africa and fighting Africans all at once? If you believed your homeland was somewhere else, would you have a desire to overthrow the people in power? If all you have to be proud of is 500-year-old slave history, assassinated Black leaders, and rap music, would you have anything to amount to? All this chaos is because of skin tone, right?
It is significant that Montague recognized many of the slaves coming not directly from Africa but from the Caribbean might have had American ancestry. Thus it may be seen that not only was there much mixture between different varieties of Negroes in the islands, but also complete mixture with the indigenous Indians and sometimes with Indians who were not indigenous to these islands. The classification of Native Americans as mulattoes in Anglo-North America. In a similar manner, the existence of a large group of red Black people, part African, part American, has been largely overlooked, and in fact such people has been classified as Black by both scholars and North American statutes. The use of the terms Negro and Black to include persons of Native American ancestry in Anglo-North America. In 1854, the California State Supreme Court sought to bar all non-Caucasians from equal citizenship and civil rights. The court stated, "The word Black may include all Negroes, but the term Negro does not include all Black persons." In other words, the United States government couldn't install Jim Crow laws and segregation because they couldn't tell the difference between slaves directly from Africa, the free African settlers in the Americas before Columbus, that had children and families with Native Americans, and escaped slaves that ran away to hide in Indian tribes. So they classified everyone with Afro DNA as Negro or Black, later changed to African American, the term widely used today. So by definition, the term Negro means Native Black American or Black American. By the early 19th century, Maroons freed Black people, freedom seekers from Jamaica, and the Seminole were in regular contact in Florida, where they evolved a system of relations unique among North Native Americans and Black people. After winning independence in the Revolution, American slaveholders were increasingly worried about the armed Black communities in Florida. Wanting to disrupt Florida's Maroon and Seminole communities, General Andrew Jackson attacked the Negro Fort, which had become a Black Seminole stronghold after the British had allowed them to occupy it when they evacuated Florida. Jackson ordered General Edmund Gaines to invade Florida with 100 regulars, destroy the fort, and enslave the inhabitants. Jackson secured the assistance of hundreds of Creek warriors by promising them a cash reward of as much as $50 a head for every Black slave returned to captivity. The violence began on July 15, 1816, when Black Seminoles and Maroon fighters from Negro Fort killed several United States Navy sailors who had come ashore at Apalachicola Bay. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, hundreds of pro-American Creek warriors clashed with Black rebels in the dense woods surrounding the fort, which at times descended into bloody hand-to-hand combat. With American troops watching from a safe distance, the number of casualties went unrecorded. When a failed sortie by the fort's defenders was repulsed, an American eyewitness suspected it was only a ruse. With a pause in the ground fighting, American Army and Navy vessels on the river exchanged cannon fire with the fort's defenders for several days. The bombardment continued to the morning of July 27th, when a heated cannonball, or hotshot, fired from U.S. gunboat 154 flew over walls of Negro Fort's massive inner citadel, landing directly on a gunpowder magazine. The resulting explosion killed nearly every man, woman, and child inside the fort and in its vicinity. Though estimates varied, the number of dead likely reached more than 300. Fewer than a dozen black Seminoles survived to be sold into slavery. The response of American officials to the destruction of Negro Fort was muted, largely because the entire campaign was illegal. After all, with neither congressional nor executive authority, the United States Armed Forces had invaded a foreign territory. Within 2 years of the Battle of Negro Fort, Jackson and the American Army again invaded Florida. The resulting First Seminole War would be the first of 3 wars between the United States and Florida's black Indian population, who simply refused to submit to their Northern American.
Mestizaje. As a result, this ideology of mixing has been used for centuries to deny the presence of black and indigenous people throughout the region. The white elites came up with a plan to systemically, physically, and culturally wipe out black people. How did the region do it? Mass white European immigration, while banning the immigration of non-whites. Welcome to the Blancamiento and Brancamiento period, which literally mean to whiten. The goal was for future generations to no longer have visibly black and indigenous people, so that the national identities in these new nations would be associated with whiteness. In this period, elites aimed to make black people disappear through their gradual absorption into the white race. Over 10 million European immigrants settled in Latin America between 1880 and 1930, with 90% of them going to Argentina, Uruguay, Cuba, and Brazil. Brazil even went as far as to pay for transportation costs from Europe and passed a law making European immigrants automatic citizens as soon as they arrived. European immigrants were given preference over black people in jobs, housing, and education, and the impacts of this are still felt today. Today, over 78% of Afro-Brazilians live below the poverty line. There have been many attempts to resist the relentless oppression of black people in Latin America. In Brazil, the Unified Black Movement has challenged racial and class discrimination since the 70s. And in Colombia, Francia Marquez has led the battle for Afro-Colombian land rights since she was 15. She gave a voice to people who didn't feel represented by the white elites who ruled Colombia for centuries. And in 2022, she was elected Colombia's first black vice president.
Después de 214 años, logramos un gobierno del pueblo, el gobierno de los nadies y las nadies de Colombia.
So the policies aimed at erasing black people from society failed, but they successfully created many obstacles that prevented Afro-descendants from accessing land, education, and the labor market. And that's why you can't talk about the current conditions of black people in Latin America without acknowledging the centuries of discrimination, racism, and oppression. Dash says that in order for
The use of the term Negro and Black to include persons of Native ancestry in Anglo-North America. In 1854, the California State Supreme Court sought to bar all non-Caucasians from equal citizenship and civil rights. The court stated, "The word black may include all Negroes, but the term Negro does not include all black persons." The possibility that Native Americans were quite commonly called Negroes is very much supported by Portuguese usage. During the colonial period, Brazilian Indians were repeatedly referred to as Negroes, or as Negros de Terra, meaning Negroes of the land. It is significant that Montague recognized many of the slaves coming not directly from Africa but from the Caribbean, might have had American ancestry. Thus it may be seen that not only was there much mixture between different varieties of Negroes in the islands but also complete mixture with the indigenous Indians and sometimes with Indians who are not indigenous to these islands. Montagu also recognized that once the people of African descent had reached North America, intermixture with Americans continued. The available evidence indicates that ethnic mixture between Indians and Negroes has been of vastly greater proportions than has been realized. The American Negro population of today is a composite of African, white, and Indian elements.